NASCAR is interested in flying cars. North Wilkesboro might be returning to NASCAR Cup Series schedule very, very soon in the next couple of years. And Spire Motorsports will be fielding a Truck Series team in the 2022 season. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR story sets here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off with Ty Majeski, as Ty Majeski won the South Carolina 400 this past weekend. Ty Majeski, we all know, is a very good late model racer. He was the favorite going into the event, so it does not surprise he was able to win that event. I believe he either won the event in 2019 or 2020, so he does have a lot of experience when it comes to running that event and contending for victories in late model, so it does not shock me. But really congratulations to Ty Majeski. It's unclear what he'll be doing next year. Maybe he'll be going to ThorSport in the Truck Series next year. I really hope he gets chosen as one of those drivers for their truck programs. I'd rather see him in the truck. No offense to Johnny Slaughter. I'd rather see him in ThorSport's truck program. But really happy to see this for sure. I think this is really awesome. I'm glad to see that Ty Majeski won the Truck Series event, the late model event at the South Carolina 400. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kurt Busch. As Kurt Busch won the 2.4 hours of late mullets this weekend at the Late Mullets Speedway. For those who don't know, Cletus McFarland has this really major event where he tracks racing stars and stars from the motorsports world overall. He's had people like Parker Kligerman in there, Haley Deegan, among other drivers who have competed in that event. They've also had Larry McReynolds also get involved in this event as well. But I think this is a really cool event, and they were able to get Kurt Busch to compete in this event, and he was able to win with Vaughn Glidden Jr. as his teammate. This event has been a really good show, and I'm very surprised a lot of people don't really know about this much. I think the more NASCAR starts to get out there, the more traction the series is going to have, but I think this is really cool that Kurt Busch won this event. I thought it was really entertaining and funny, and really cool to see that Kurt Busch won this event. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet, as they both have become promoters at Silver Dollar Speedway in California. Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet, both basically two of the best sprint car racers in the world. We know Kyle Larson's a Cup Series champion, and Brad Sweet's a guy who's won the World of Outlaws Championship. But two guys who know how to get it done, and really cool to see. They're from the California area too, so it doesn't surprise me. Kyle Larson from Elk Grove, California. I think Brad Sweet's from like Rosenbaum, California, or something like that. I don't remember exactly where Brad Sweet's from, but they're both from California, so it makes a lot of sense to promote. I think they're also promoting with somebody else. I'm not entirely sure who else they're promoting it with, but I think that this is a really cool story that they were able to do this. I think this is awesome. I'm really happy to see that they become promoters at the track. And it's going to get a lot of attention because you see Kyle Larson's name up there, the Cup Series champion. Of course, people are going to be interested, and people are going to be interested in potentially looking at that. So really cool to see that Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet have become promoters at Silver Dollar Speedway. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kyle Larson again, as Kyle Larson is able to win Night 2 of the Hangtown 100 qualifiers at Placerville Speedway. Now, Kyle Larson in the feature event, unfortunately, I think ended up flipping in the main event. He had gotten up to, I believe, in 6th position in the event before flipping. But Night 2 of the Hangtown 100, he was able to win and was able, at the point, lead the points there, but unfortunately was not able to hang on to the points championship. But no surprise that Kyle Larson won this event. Kyle Larson has won so many different events. You also had Chase Elliott, who competed in the event. I don't even think Chase Elliott, unfortunately, made it to the mains, which sucks because it would have been cool to see Chase Elliott make it to the mains, because I think it would have been really awesome. But at the same time, to have a guy like Kyle Larson continue to go out there and impress people left, right, and center, and I think it's really awesome, and awesome to see this for sure. And I'm happy to see that Kyle Larson is able to go out there and win one of the events. I don't remember who won the main one. I know Ryan Timms, who's a 16-year-old up-and-coming star in the sprint car world, who could be a driver that we should be looking out for long term. He's a driver that I think a lot of people need to keep your eyes on, and hopefully we'll see them hit Kyle Larson maybe run some more dirt. We know that he's probably going to be running the Chili Bowl, and he'll probably run some maybe other events, and maybe you never know, he'll run the Rolex 24. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but Kyle Larson was able to win the Hangtown 100 on, I think, Saturday or Friday. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Rusty Wallace as Skechers. It was reported by Adam Stern that Rusty Wallace is going to promote Skechers Goodyear Performance outsoles lines, which is part of a partnership between the shoe company and Goodyear. This is really awesome, to be honest with you, to have a driver like Rusty Wallace come in. Now, I know that Rusty Wallace has not competed in NASCAR since the 2005 season, so it's been 16 years since Rusty Wallace has raced. But a lot of people know that name. Everyone knows Wallace. Wallace is a name that's really legendary. You remember how good Rusty Wallace was in the Cup Series back in the 80s and the 90s. He was so dominant in those times, and a Cup Series champion in 1989, so it does not shock me. I would have, though, liked to see like a modern-day like driver like like a Kevin Harvick, perhaps, Kyle Busch, even a Kyle Larson, perhaps, get involved in that. But I do think it is really awesome that they were able to get a guy like Rusty Wallace to promote a company like Skechers. I know that's Goodyear. I think Goodyear has never had a brand before with Skechers, if I remember correctly. So this is really awesome to be able to get a branding with Skechers. I think it's awesome, and I'm happy to see this overall for sure. I think it's really cool, and overall, I'm happy to see this for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Voyager and Landon Cassill. It was reported also by Adam Stern that crypto platform Voyager says its foray into NASCAR has been successful, and that is extending its sponsorship of Landon Cassill as a result for the 2022 season. He also mentions that Voyager CEO Steven Ehrlich says there will be an announcement soon, but that they want to find Cassill a winning car for next year. I would also like to see Landon Cassill get a good opportunity. Now, for a lot of you who don't know, Landon Cassill is involved in the crypto world, and Voyager is one of the cryptocurrencies and has a lot of crypto involved in it. And I know that Landon Cassill did not really have a great season as a driver this year, but of course, the cars they ran in JD Motorsports took a major step back this year. And Landon Cassill, I do believe, finished in the top 20 points. And considering the cars that he was in, it's really good to see that he was able to at least finish in the top 20 in points this year, I believe. But I really do, in all honesty, in all seriousness, I want to see him get a really good opportunity at a really good team. Now, there are a few potential rides that could be available going into next year. You do, of course, have, Kaulig Racing's 10 car that could be available next year, and we don't know who's going to be in that ride. I know some names that have been mentioned, guys like Parker Kligerman, Zane Smith, guys that potentially get in that ride, but Landon Cassill should definitely be a driver that's up for consideration to go into that ride next year. I think Landon Cassill would be a great opportunity. Our Motorsports, we don't know who's going to be back at the team. We don't know if they're going to have two drivers, just two full-time drivers, or one full-time driver. I would assume that Brett Moffitt will be going back to drive for them full-time next year, and then maybe the 23 car could be a rotation, but I could also see Landon Cassill having that opportunity to go into that ride next year. So unclear where Landon Cassill is going to go. I think it will be in the Xfinity Series next year, but I think he deserves that opportunity. And he does have funding for the first time because I think that he does a lot better than people give him credit for. I think he's an excellent driver and a driver that knows how to get it done on a week-by-week basis. And I do hope, in all seriousness, that we get to see Landon Cassill in a winning car and a winning opportunity in the 2022 season. I want to see him in a good car next year. I really, really do. And with the funding to help him out going into next year, I do hope that he gets an opportunity to be in a good team, either Xfinity or Cup, whatever team he gets to drive. I like seeing him in a good ride going into next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Trackhouse Racing. As yesterday, Trackhouse Racing has officially moved into their new Cup Series shop for the 2022 season. Now, for those of you who do not know, they're moving into the Chip Ganassi Racing shop as they have bought up the parts and they have bought the Cup Series operation from Chip Ganassi Racing. So they're moving into the old Chip Ganassi Racing shop, and now Trackhouse Racing has their own shop, which they are taking away next year. Unclear how big the partnership is going to be, if they're going to be getting more of an alliance from the Chevy side or if they're going to get less of an alliance, probably similar to what they did with Hendrick. They're probably going to have some of an alliance with RSR and also some of an alliance with Hendrick, but they're also unclear there. First of all, shop looks amazing. I think they did a really good job with the signing, and I think it's really, really, and they also had Our House, which I think is really, really cool to see overall for sure. And they move into the shop for next year. Now, the one thing that's been brought up in the past and is brought up during the National weekend is in the next couple years, Trackhouse Racing would like to move out to the Nashville area, and on the Broadways, the Boulevard Broadways in Nashville, they actually would like to have their own shop in that area. So I don't know. One question I have is, will they keep this shop or will they have two shops? Potentially one in Nashville where people can come look, like a dive bar at top of their shop, and they'd be able to check out what's going on in the shop and have it out there for people. Trackhouse Racing is a team that's really, really inventive. We know what they're looking for the future for next year. They're looking at potentially wanting to go to IndyCar, run the Indy 500 next year. They're looking at maybe in the future doing other motorsports events, among other things. Maybe an Xfinity Series team could open up for them long term. That's one thing we're going to have to wait and see in regards to that. But I do think it overall is really, really awesome that they're looking to be inventive in some ways, and also some ways they're not looking to be as inventive. But at the same time, I think that this is really, really exciting, really, really cool. And I'm overall happy about this for sure, because I think it's really, really awesome, and really happy to see the Trackhouse has officially moved into their shop. So I think it's really, really exciting for the future, and it's a good story overall for sure, and I'm happy about this overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about the Arc East and West schedules for the 2022 season. The first one we're going to take a look at is the 2022 Arca East schedule, and I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of racing in the Arca East schedule. Starting off with Arc East, New Samara will kick it off on February 15th. Then it'll be a month break, and then we'll go to Five Flags on March 19th. Followed by Dover on April 29th. Then we'll go to National Fairgrounds on May the 7th. Followed by Iowa on June 11th, Milwaukee on August 28th, and then the final race will be at Bristol on September 17th. I'll be honest, the development in Arca East has been dying, and there's only 7 races next year, and unclear who will be in the team because Sammy Smith Jr. is going to be going to full-time Arca next year. So it's really unclear how many races. There are only 7 races for next year. That's frustrating. Now let's move on to the Arca West schedules for next year, and there's actually more races for the Arca West schedule next year. The season will kick off at Phoenix on March 11th, then there'll be a 2-week break, and then we'll go to Irwindale on March the 26th. Then we'll go to Kearns County Speedway. We're returning to that track for the first time in 2 years. We go into Kearns County April 23rd. Then we'll have about a month and a half break, and then we'll go to Portland Speedway on June the 4th. Then a week later, we'll go to Sonoma on June the 11th, which is also the day of return for the Truck Series. And then about 3 weeks later, we'll go to Irwindale on July the 2nd once again. Then we'll go to Evergreen Speedway on August 20th, and then a few weeks later, we'll return to Portland Speedway on September the 3rd. Then we'll go to All-American Speedway on October 1st, and then 2 weeks later, we'll go to Las Vegas Motor Speedway Burbank on October 14th, and the season will officially end at Phoenix on November the 5th. I like the Arca West schedule a lot more, 11 races next year. Big question is how many drivers are going to show up in the field because the Arca West and the E Series, they haven't had as many big fields. We probably know the DGR will probably have Taylor Gray running in that series. They'll probably have some young development going into there, but unclear which drivers will be racing in those series next year. Probably a lot of guys that were competing for that Arca championship and trying to win that event will probably be overall competing. So this is definitely really interesting schedules, and those are the schedules for 2022 Arca. Very interesting as a whole, and I'm very interested to see what happens long term with the Arca East and West series. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, and we're going to talk about Dodge and NASCAR. Now, a lot of you are talking about a tweet that recently came out with Dodge, and there was a tweet they said, if you don't love horsepower, we have nothing in common. Now, basically, a lot of people felt like that was a dig at NASCAR because we all know that they are basically, at this moment, reducing the horsepower from 550 horsepower on the intermediate tracks and 670 horsepower, which are reducing horsepower from the smaller tracks and the road courses from 750 to 670 horsepower. So, a lot of people think because of that tweet, they're like, okay, there's a very, very strong chance that NASCAR is not going to, and Dodge is not going to return to NASCAR long term. This is not really true at all. And I think a lot of people really read that tweet and kind of took it seriously. Dodge has tended to have a lot of really, really interesting, like inspirational tweets throughout their Twitter. If you go through their Twitter, they basically do say this. And I know a lot of people assume that basically this means Dodge is not going to turn to NASCAR, which, again, I don't think is the case. I still think Dodge is coming back. There's been people saying it's most likely going to happen, though. We've had reports for decades now, for like a decade or so, that a new manufacturer was going to come in, and basically the most likely to get a new manufacturer, which a lot of you are probably wondering, when will we get a new manufacturer? I would assume if we are to get a new manufacturer, it probably will not be till the new engine package comes in, which is at least for the next couple of years. But they said people are saying it most likely it'll happen very, very soon in the next week or so. We may know what's going on with Tony Stewart's NHRA team, which is the most likely driver and team to most likely go to Dodge along with Rick Ward Racing, since Rick Ward does have a Penny Series team. So that's one thing we're very interested in. I thought it was very, very funny, very, very lighthearted. I think people shouldn't have taken it very, very seriously. I did at first, don't get me wrong, but then I realized I think I misrepresented the tweet a little bit, and I think, honestly, I think a lot of people misrepresented the tweet, and Dodge still, I think, will come back to NASCAR. I think their tweet was just very, very funny and very, very interesting at the same time. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Rockingham Speedway. Now, along with North Wilkesboro getting a ton of money, Rockingham Speedway is going to be getting $9 million going into their products. And there was a report that recently came out, and they said that the plan for the $9 million going into Rockingham is being planned to repave the track and add lights, and the goal is to track series like Arca, SRX, and NASCAR. Unlike North Wilkesboro, where there is a lot of stuff that needs to be done to the track, Rockingham Speedway basically has kept their track up, and they've actually had racing there over the last couple years. So, because the track is so old and nearly really needs a repave right now, it's been very tough on the tires that basically run at that racetrack. So they really have, unfortunately, not been able to have racing at that racetrack recently in the last couple of years now. And we haven't seen racing at Rockingham, at least in the top series since the 2013 season in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. Now, my big question in regards is the $9 million. Will that be enough? I absolutely think so. And they're also going to be adding lights as well, which means most likely we could get a night race long-term as well, which is a really, really good thing. My big question is long-term is when could we see a NASCAR race or any sort of racing return? If they get the track repaved soon enough in the next couple years, I don't think it'll be till 2023. I know people think it won't be till like 2024, 2025, but I think it could be very, very soon and as early as not next season, but the 2023 season. And the reason I mentioned that is I think that if NASCAR wanted to, and this would be a great theory, why not bring Rockingham Speedway back to the Cup Series some way, and why not make Rockingham the All-Star race? And I theorize this because I think Rockingham Speedway, a short track in the North Carolina area, move it back to the traditional May time and have it in the area because Rockingham is kind of close to that Charlotte area. So, and Richmond County is not too far from the Charlotte area. So, I would think if they were to bring Rockingham Speedway back, I would like to see it at least for the first year. I like to see it as the All-Star race, but the fact that we could not only potentially get one track back, but another track back on the NASCAR schedule is really, really awesome, and they're going to be doing a lot of good stuff, and I think that this is really, really awesome. Rockingham Speedway is potentially coming back very, very soon, and I think the sooner we can get that back, I think the better it's going to be for everybody involved. So I do hope overall it happens next year. I hope it happens very, very soon, and I hope that we can return to Rockingham in the next couple years. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk a little bit more about the next-gen car. Now, Bob Pockers did a report not too long ago, and he basically reported talking about NASCAR and their thoughts on the next-gen test and how they went. NASCAR says that it saw something they did not like: speed slow at intermediates and limited ability to pass. There is a possible test that could happen on the week of the 29th. Bozy Tedorovic, who does work in IMSA with the Vassar Sullivan organization, who knows a lot of stuff about IMSA, and they're talking about potentially having larger taper spacers on the cars at that test as well. Now, they also mentioned during that next-gen data article as well that they actually went down from an 8-inch spoiler to 7-inch spoiler. That's what the SHR cars ran. And they increased 1 mile per hour and also increased about 30 horsepower with them reducing the size of the spoiler. Now, this is one thing I've been saying for a very, very long time. I think that one of the big reasons why they can't pass is it's full throttle. I think off-throttle time is super, super important. If you want to create passing, you have to have off-throttle time. You can't just have you legitimately cannot just have no off-throttle time and expect much passing on the track. We're not at Talladega and Daytona. We're not at those super speedway tracks. I know some people think we should be like that, but you can't really pass. Look, for example, look at the Michigan race earlier this year. While the race looked really, really close racing does not mean good racing. And I think NASCAR needs to realize at this point, why don't we just run at this point? Why don't we just run the same package running for the short tracks and road courses? Why don't we just run 670 horsepower at every single track? I think that would make a lot more sense to not create this hassle and, except for super speedways, run the same 670 horsepower package with 4-inch spoilers. I think it's a 4-inch spoiler for those tracks, and run the same freaking spoiler. Because I think what NASCAR is going to realize is that if they don't make the change, I think NASCAR says that they were going to run. I hope that NASCAR makes the right decision. And in my opinion, you want to know what the right decision is? And of course, is increasing horsepower back into 670 horsepower. Off-throttle time, being able to get off-throttle and full throttle racing is not good racing in my honest opinion. And I know that I've talked about, I'm a little bit open to it, but at the same time, if you always have full throttle racing, the racing isn't good and you can't pass on the track, though they did mention probably they weren't pushing it as hard. But at the same time, if you create full throttle racing all the time, you're not going to get the best racing out there. So if you want my honest opinion, once again, I think increase horsepower up the package. Just run the same package that they're running with the road course and short track programs. I think that we will have a much better season and much better racing on intermediate tracks. It may not be as good as some of the 550 races last year, but I think that we've proven in intermediate tracks we put on good racing if you can increase horsepower up to 670. So, you give them off throttle time. But that's just my honest opinion on that. I think NASCAR hopefully win that next-gen test. They will reduce the size of the spoilers, maybe down to 6, maybe even 5 inches would not be the end of the world, and give them about 150 to 200 more horsepower than they currently have right now. But that is just my honest opinion on that. I think 650 probably would be a great range to go to for next year, but they can get higher, like up to 670 or even 700 horsepower. That would be great. But in my opinion, they need to 100% consider at this point increasing the size of the horsepower. I think you'll have better racing as a whole than not. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the SRX and North Wilkesboro. Now, Ray Everham basically says that he wants to bring an SRX event to North Wilkesboro, but that it will not be next year. It won't be 2022 for us. I don't think the track would be ready in time. But let me tell you, we would love to be at North Wilkesboro. That would be awesome. Now, we're going to talk a lot about North Wilkesboro NASCAR in just a little bit. But for those of you who have not been really paying attention too much, which is very difficult sometimes, but basically, North Wilkesboro is getting, I think, an $18 million, and they're potentially also getting a $5 million grant as well. I love Marcus Lemonis's $1 million event. And there has been a lot of speculation about a racing series potentially going to North Wilkesboro, whether it's at dirt or on the regular track in 2022. But SRX basically is coming out and saying that they're not coming to North Wilkesboro next year. That does not surprise me. The track needs a ton of things done. But I think very, very soon in the next couple of years, you are potentially going to see a series like the SRX come into motorsports at North Wilkesboro once again. Because, again, I think that track definitely deserves a series like the SRX. I think that if the first series that should run before any of the NASCAR series do run, or even Arca, I think the first series that should run in North Wilkesboro, which I think would be really, really cool, is the SRX series. Get a lot of legends of motorsports, guys that have potentially already raced at North Wilkesboro, and I think that it'd be really, really cool if they can get the SRX back at the North Wilkesboro track. I think, again, I really would like to see this happen. The SRX come back to North Wilkesboro. North Wilkesboro come back in general for racing. I know that there's been some people, because of the account that runs it right now, basically saying that they don't want it back just because of the account, how much they push it. But the city wants it, Wilkes County absolutely, and I think that Wilkes County also is going to have to get renovated at the same time as well. But I would love to see North Wilkesboro come back. It's a legendary track, and hey, there is very, very good potential and a very strong chance that North Wilkesboro could come back very, very soon. So I think it's really, really awesome. I'm very excited about it. And again, I really want to see it happen. I really want to see North Wilkesboro make its return. I think it would be great for the sport as a whole. And hopefully there is a very, very strong possibility and a strong chance that it does come back. I think if there is a series that should kick off the return of it, I think the series, of course, should be the SRX. I think the SRX before any other series should come back. And now we're going to jump on to the next couple stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about a couple major penalties that did happen that were announced on Monday. Now, first one we're talking about is Cesar Baccarella, who is going to be the owner of Alpha Prime Racing, as he has been suspended indefinitely by NASCAR for violating the substance abuse policy. According to them, Baccarella says in statement that a workout supplement caused it and has to comply with NASCAR and is expected to complete Road to Recovery program. Now, when I first saw that, like, oh God, Cesar Baccarella is taking drugs. Oh God. But if it's a supplement, it's something in a supplement, I can't be really, really mad about that because, hey, it's supplements. Sometimes you're going to find things in supplements. Sometimes you probably should read what's in the supplements. But at the same time, it's very difficult to sometimes read between the lines because probably is using it as a workout supplement and was probably doing that to get in shape because he's supposed to be racing next year. Well, he's supposed to be racing. But my question is, will he return to the track and be racing, ready to go next year? I think he'll be back at some point next year to race. It probably won't be, though, until the end of the year because it takes some time to get through that Road to Recovery program, though some people have been able to get through the Road to Recovery program a lot sooner. But I hope Cesar Baccarella, wish him the best of luck, and hopefully he's able to recover because, again, it's something that's really, really not serious, even though it is serious that he did violate the drug test policy. I know some people basically were calling it snowflakey, but NASCAR has rules. You have to apply with them, but sometimes it was just an innocent mistake and really, really something that he couldn't overall control. Sometimes you're going to have those issues overall. But that was the first penalty that was announced. That was Cesar Baccarella. The other penalty that was announced, we'll talk about Mike Harmon. Mike Harmon and Mike Harmon Racing have been docked 75 driver and owner's points for 2022 and suspended Ryan Bell 6 races and fined $50,000 for violating the testing policy. Now, what has happened? Well, they apparently tested at Rockingham. They bring up that it was a charity event, but they apparently were testing at Rockingham with the car that they ran at Phoenix. And Mike Harmon, in a statement that was released last night, he says that they are planning to appeal the penalties that were given out to them. Now, first of all, I want to say this. I understand Mike Harmon Racing being upset. I understand what a lot of fans are thinking. I am not a major fan of the testing policies. I think the testing policies in NASCAR are ridiculous, and especially with COVID-19 and some of the rulings. So, because again, I think the NASCAR with the testing, and again, I personally think that NASCAR should at least allow some sort of testing back into the sport, considering we haven't really had any sort of much practice qualifying, and the team is a little bit behind. They are a smaller team, and I do think overall the penalty is a little bit harsh. I don't think a smaller team like that should be able to get a major penalty like that. And I know that the NASCAR people bring up the Hendrick track attack program, but NASCAR apparently let that go. Same with DGM. DGM actually got a penalty, but then the penalty got rescinded because of NASCAR felt like, okay, they got it right there. But here's the reason why that I believe that Mike Harmon Racing, why I think that Mike Harmon will not get this penalty repealed and the sentences will not get repealed. First reason, they posted it on social media. What do you honestly expect? You basically snitched on yourselves and you put it out on social media. If you don't put it out on social media, you're not going to get penalized for it. So it's really their fault that they're in trouble. And I understand them being upset about it, but at the same time, it really is their fault. They kind of put themselves in a hole and put themselves in that position. You all can say, well, Mike Harmon Racing should be allowed to test. And while I think it's true that they should be allowed to test, you have to know what is right from wrong. And in my opinion, what Mike Harmon did and that team did was absolutely wrong. They need to know the testing rules. Again, I would have not given him that big of a penalty. I would have probably given him maybe like a 25-point penalty, 2,500 points, and maybe suspended the crew chief for one race. But there's a very strong chance next year that T could be the first driver to have negative points and the first team potentially to have negative points on their owners' points next year. So that's something that's going to be crazy now, unless they're able to get a lot of good runs, depending on which drivers they get next year. That's unclear at the moment. But I do think the penalty is a little bit harsh, but at the same time, the testing rules are the rules, and you have to follow the rules regardless. So that's my opinion on the Mike Harmon situation. I know a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on that, but the rules are the rules. You have to follow them, and that's just my honest opinion on that. And now we're going to jump on to the first of three major stories of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Spire Motorsports. As was announced earlier this morning, that Spire Motorsports is going to add a truck series team in the 2022 season. Kevin Manuel moving over from GMS to crew chief for the team, and Mike Bresci is going to oversee the program, and a driver is to be announced. For a lot of you don't know, Spire Motorsports has been the Cup Series since the 2019 season, and their team kind of started off at a rocky start. They showed signs of improvement in the 2020 season, at least with their 7-car, but they had a lot of mechanical problems, and Corey LaJoie, I believe, finished 30th in the points, which was the second or third worst of any of the full-time drivers, though they did show promise of points in the 2021 season, which is great to see. And now they're going to open up a truck series team. This is really exciting at the same time, too. So you have another team that's going to be coming down to the truck series next year. I assume that they're also going to be a Chevy team in the 2022 season, which I think is also really cool to see if they're going to be moving into the truck series well and expanding. Now, my question is, can they be a competitive team next year? That's going to depend on management. Now, they have Kevin Manion coming into the crew chiefing side of things, which I think that's a thumbs up. Kevin Manion is an excellent and a very good crew chief and knows what he's doing as a crew chief as well. So he's going to know what he's doing. He knows what is going to have to get done, and I think he'll do a great job as a crew chief next year. My big question is, who is also going to be the driver next year? There are 3 drivers that I think potentially could go there. The first one, Zane Smith. Zane Smith drove the number 21 for GMS Racing, which, of course, his crew chief was, you guessed it, Kevin Manion. And he is unclear if he'll be returning to GMS Racing in 2022. We know that GMS Racing is only expected to run a 2 or 3 truck operation, and I think if they're going to run a 3 truck operation next year, even though the Zane Smith probably thinks there's a chance to come back to GMS, I would assume that Zane Smith will be let out for Chase Purdy because Chase Purdy has that Bama Buggy sponsorship. And, of course, he doesn't really have a sponsorship except Michael Roberts' construction. And we know Spire Motorsports probably has a little bit of funding going for them. So they probably would be able to sponsor him perhaps if he went to the team. And like I said, he had a working relationship with him. I've also heard rumors of Rackley WAR potentially being a team he could go to next year. But that's potentially the first driver to think of. The second driver is Matt DiBenedetto. Now, we do not know what's going on with Matt DiBenedetto next year. There is talk of him working on some sponsorship and some funding. I've heard rumors that maybe front row he could be the second driver front row next year. But if he can't go there, I think he'd definitely be a really, really solid candidate and a very, very solid choice. I know that Matty D's time at Wood Brothers really was not that inspiring, to be honest with you. In the 2 years, he probably should have at least contended for victories with the Spire Motorsports team, with the Wood Brothers organization. But at the same time, he basically did kind of got a good career with the end. Jonathan Hassler was able to help him out run a little bit better. And had we not had the win in your system, he would have actually made the playoffs once again in the 2021 season. So he had made the playoffs for a second year. And I think there's a chance he could go to trucks. It's unclear what team will go to, but that could be the second driver. The third and final driver that it could potentially be for a 2022 season is Ryan Preece. Now, Ryan Preece, I think we've heard some talk about Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece is a driver that has been working on some sort of sponsorship for the 2022 season. We know that he's had conversations with multiple teams, and one of the teams has been Hattori Racing. But I've also heard that Tyler Ankrum could be the favorite to go to the 16 truck, which really is not that surprising considering Tyler Ankrum is a driver that a lot of people associate. Plus, he does have funding, and he's also from their team. So he could go to Hattori Racing. But if Hattori Racing is not available and a Cup Series team is not available, why not go to Spire Motorsports in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series? I think that if you're going to look for a driver that is going to help your team develop a lot more, I do think that a team like Spire Motorsports could be that team that helps out and needs to develop a driver. I think Ryan Preece would be a great driver. I know this time at JC Doherty Racing wasn't impressive, but you look at the one race he had with DGR Racing. He was able to go out there with DGR Racing, and he was able to go out there and win in his first career NASCAR Camping World Truck Series start. So I think it definitely be a great acquisition and a great choice for a team if it came down. Of those three drivers, who do I think is the most likely to go to the ride? I think it'll come down between Zane Smith or Matt DiBenedetto. And I think it's going to potentially go to Zane Smith or Ryan Preece. It could be any of these three drivers. I think if I had to personally choose, I'd go with an older veteran like Ryan Preece and Matt DiBenedetto, but I do think that there's a very strong chance they also go with Zane Smith. So it's really clear it's going to go to the Truck Series ride, but whoever they choose of these three drivers, I think it would be a great decision. I don't want to see a driver that really doesn't bring a lot of funding like a Quinn Houff, who could also potentially be opening up an Xfinity Series team next year. We don't know about that. But at the same time, I think Spire Motorsports owning a Truck Series team is really, really cool. The goal for the team, try to finish as many races as possible, try to get some top 20s, maybe even do some top 10s. We saw Front Row go to trucks. A lot of people thought that team really wasn't going to be good. And then they got Todd Gillen, and they performed very, very well. So this is really, really exciting, and hopefully they will do well next year in 2022 in the Camping World Truck Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about NASCAR's potential return to North Wilkesboro. Now, after the budget was officially built, and North Wilkesboro was going to be getting $18 million, Marcus Siff released a statement in regards to NASCAR's potential return to North Wilkesboro. And he says it is Speedways Motorsports' goal to modernize North Wilkesboro Speedway so that it can host racing and special events once again in the near future. Now, we know right now that North Wilkesboro is going to need a lot of help to get the track up and running. It's going to take some time to get that track up and running because there is a lot of things that need to be done. They've had sewage problems, plumbing problems, a lot of issues. One of the terraces where the media goes, that has like a major hole in it. There's a lot that needs to be done. However, really it started about a year ago during basically when they had the iRacing in North Wilkesboro back on the circuit. There was starting to be a major, major push for North Wilkesboro to return. And with this budget coming in, it is becoming more and more likely that it is going to happen. And I know some people talk about maybe them making it a dirt track. I would assume that they would probably just make it the normal racetrack once again, with it being repaved and everything updated. They're going to need a lot to be done. However, I'm starting to feel much more confident about North Wilkesboro returning than I was even a few months ago. And this is making me really, really happy. And Wilkes County and North Wilkesboro area really, really, really want this track to come back. You see the city and basically said welcome and open arms with the track return. They've had people go out there kind of clean up the track. They've had Jeff Hammond out there. They've had so many NASCAR people that have endorsed it. Dale Jr.'s been involved with it and stuff. And I think North Wilkesboro is trying to look at the future, but bringing back old tracks as well. And you look what they've been doing with National Fairgrounds. Potentially Rockingham is coming back. You have so many different tracks in the near future that could make their return in the next couple years. And this is a track that is no exception. North Wilkesboro is a track that I think has a very, very strong chance of coming back. And the fact that the budget is going through is really, really awesome. Now, my big question in regards to the future is, when do I think is the soonest we could see a race at North Wilkesboro? I do not think it'll happen at least for a few years because I think, like I said, there's a lot that needs to be done. But if they get enough people to work on the track, get everything renovated, I could potentially see a NASCAR return to North Wilkesboro as early as 2024, 2025, but I'm leaning more towards 2025 just because it is going to take some time to get the track because there's so much stuff that has to be repaired. The grandstands, the media outlets, there's the big grandstand building, everything in that track has so much that needs to be done, and there's going to be a lot that has to be done, but there has been definitely 100% there has been work on the track, which is a major, major positive with them cleaning up the track, getting the grass out of there. There's really no grass, no fields, all that stuff inside the track. So that's a major, major positive. And they've had people going in there and taking a look at it and stuff. And one thing it also will do is rejuvenate that town. I think the town has been missing that when they left North Wilkesboro, the town lost so many people and lost so much money that was going in. That racetrack was basically funding the whole town for basically the whole year because all that money was going to taxpayers, and taxpayers were not having to pay as much, but the money has been increasing and stuff. So this is definitely really, really exciting. The return to North Wilkesboro is in the net. I think it'll happen the next couple of years. And man, everyone's been wanting short tracks, and it's becoming more and more clear and more apparent that short tracks could be returning very, very soon. I'm telling you what, I was very, very doubtful when Marcus Smith on that podcast earlier this year. I was very doubtful about this happening along with the roof of Bristol. But this SMI group, I know they've made a lot of mistakes with some of the things they've done, but I think that they're trying to envision for the future. They look what they've done. They've acquired Dover Motorsports. They got Dover National Speedway, and they've got National Super Speedway, because they have so many tracks that are mile and a half, and it's not set up for the future of NASCAR, while North Wilkesboro track is. Now, what do I think will happen first in regards to the racing, too? I think Cup will be the most least likely to come back at first. I think it'll be the SRX first, then it'll be Arca, then Xfinity trucks, and then Cup in that order. I think Cup will not happen like 2027 or 2026 or 2027. But I think we could see racing as early as 2023, maybe Arca 2024, and then Xfinity Series and Truck Series in 2025, and then 2026 could be a return of the Cup Series. So maybe in the next 5 years, we could see NASCAR Cup Series racing at North Wilkesboro once again, which will be the first time in, get this, 30 years potentially. I think it's likely it's going to happen, and I'm really excited about this, and I hope it happens really, really soon for North Wilkesboro to return to the NASCAR schedule here in the future. And now we're going to move on to the final major story of today's episode, as they're going to talk about flying cars in NASCAR. Yes, this is a thing. According to Adam Stern, NASCAR appears to be studying the futuristic idea of flying cars. It is recently included as an option in a question to its fan council about possible exhibition racing events. This comes as a company is getting set to launch Airspeed HQ in the 2022 season. When I saw this post, and most people saw this post too, we thought that this was an Adam Stern tweet. We thought this was one of the bot tweets that used to make this up. But this is real, and this is on the fan council survey. First thing I want to say, is fan council is not a legitimate thing to use. Is not a legitimate way to tell what the fans want. I don't think that fans want a freaking flying racing series. Again, I think that is something that's really, really cool to get into the future. But it's something that why are we thinking about this in 2021? But this is something I get if we were looking at this like in 2028, 2029, maybe even 5 years or even a couple years down the road. I can understand NASCAR thinking about this, but they're thinking about this in 2021, and we really haven't seen flying cars. And I know that there's been like some drone racing and stuff that has come up over the last couple of years. There's been some drones that go 150 miles an hour, and they're talking about with those Airspeed HQs, they're talking about people being able to fly those drones, which is really, really cool. And if they were to have this stuff, it probably most likely happened, and I think it'd be really, really cool. But at the same time, is this something that we should be really, really focusing on in 2021 when there's a lot more things we should 100% be focused on? I don't know. The cars, making sure the next-gen cars, the cars that we should be focusing on right now, those should be the ones we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the current car in the field, or even electric cars. Electric cars, I can understand in 2021. You have electric racing going on like at Formula E, and you also have Extreme E as well with the Rallycross. And doesn't shock me NASCAR's looking at that, and other manufacturers come in there. But at the same time, they're looking at flying cars, and I'm just like, is NASCAR seriously using a fan council that you think that there's legitimate reason that everyone wants a 550 horsepower package, which most people would disagree. The fan council is really, really a joke with the way they word it, and NASCAR does the fan council. So in my opinion, I don't understand why they're using the fan council to determine, say, hey, the fans want this stuff, and I'm thinking probably most fans would probably croak this. I think fans can live with electric cars, even though some fans would probably leave. I think fans can live with electric car racing. I do not believe fans are overall going to be happy if you legitimately have flying cars, especially in 2022. I think most fans, you saw some fans that even said, we're very, very impatient about it. You look on Twitter and stuff, people are thinking, is this a joke? Is this seriously a joke? People have gotten out of this work because of the way NASCAR runs it, and I think NASCAR's priorities are in the wrong places right now. Again, I understand what NASCAR is trying to do. They're looking toward the future. I think that a lot of things NASCAR's done have been very, very positive. What they've been doing, inclusivity and diversity and all that stuff. But at the same time, this is something we should not 100% be focusing on. There are more important things that should be focused on. They're focusing on the wrong areas. And like I said, I know that there's a company in development. I've heard of this company before. I just don't get why they're focusing on this now, and I don't get it. I think long term, I think that this will be very, very cool long term down the road. I think it'll be something that long term will be awesome. But at the same time, this should not be the main thing we're focusing on right now down to the road. Now, my question is, what manufacturers that come in? Probably some of those air companies, maybe like, B-52s and all that stuff would come in, like bombers and all that stuff. I don't know what to think about this, to be honest with you, because, again, when I saw this report, I was like, what am I reading? Is this real? I thought this, like I said, was this Adam Stern tweet. But it's really what an Adam Stern tweeted out. I'm thinking, oh my goodness gracious, this is the thing that NASCAR is thinking about. I don't get it. I don't understand. But I think long term that this will be cool. I think long term that I like to see this long term. I 100%. But I think short term, this is a no for me. I think it's something NASCAR's got a lot of things to do, and I think this is something that even for the next 5-6 years will be down the road. So I don't want NASCAR to think about, but at the same time, NASCAR does try new things, and you never know what NASCAR has been able to accomplish. So, anyway, that is it for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Let's go over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about potentially flying cars coming into NASCAR? Do you think that it will happen in the near future or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about North Wilkesboro potentially returning to NASCAR? Let me know that in the comments below. I may not have a video up tomorrow on my channel. The next time you may see me is for the Q&A. I might also release it tomorrow as well. I have not determined if the Q&A will either come out tomorrow or that will come out on Thanksgiving. So unclear about that. That might be the next video, but I might also have something else out on Wednesday. I've not determined if that is going to be the case yet or though. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.